But just having your own personal board of directors, people that you can reach out to and toss around ideas about career, your personal life, your financial life. And I think that having those people, I think it's very important. But at the end of the day, you have to believe in your idea.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Jodi Shelton is the co-founder and president of GSA, which is the Global Semiconductor Alliance. She is a pioneer within the technology space, and she was instrumental in creating an alliance of these global, huge companies to get together and address on a continuous basis some of the global issues and to be the voice of these members. In many cases, these are competitors, some of the biggest companies in the world. She is the liaison between them and helping drive innovation through this alliance. It's not every day, historically especially, that you have such a voice of authority and senior leader as a female in the semiconductor world and industry. Now, I met Jodi because we serve on a private board together for a startup that you will be hearing more about soon. It's currently in stealth mode, but I learned a ton from her and her leadership, and this ability to use listening as a superpower that then is converted into building bridges among unlikely entities is something that I've witnessed her do firsthand. Talk about a superpower. Now, this conversation, like all of our conversations on this show, is wide-ranging. Jodi has a passion for travel, for culture. She, I would say, uses curiosity as a hobby, just like myself. And today, I literally received a text message from her. She is currently 1 mile away from the Ukrainian border, and she's working with the World Central Kitchen and that team to help serve food to Ukrainians right on the border. Now, that's the type of travel she does. She is a global speaker, speaking on the semiconductor industry and innovation and trends going on. She can be found in a variety of different countries throughout the month. So travel is definitely something that she's passionate about. That being said, she has also taken up screenwriting. So believe it or not, that was something that she started doing during the pandemic with her son. And she talks about that a bit. Now, I say all of this because clearly Jodi's, she has a full life and plenty to do. But she talks through her philosophy of the word busy and how she rejects that word. And quote, I just turn down busy things that don't bring a lot of value to my life. She is an expert at this. And I am definitely a student of that game, and I believe most of us are. So you will hear more on that topic as well. Her zest for life is contagious. And Jodi also opens up and actually shares pretty candidly about a very difficult season that she recently went through and is still navigating, and that is losing her husband not too long ago, and how that has informed and helped shape the way she is living her days today, and how that process has been something that she's learned a great deal from. I was recently invited to attend one of Jodi's conferences here in Austin, Texas, and she brought together some of the most senior, brilliant minds, all female, in technology. And she had them share their parallels of their career and their personal life and how they navigated the last couple of decades, for example. It was really cool to see this approach and to see her vision come to life in terms of how we can share both of those paths. And seeing is believing. So these women have made it to the top of their careers. They've done very, very impressive things. But they also shared what it was like to navigate as a woman growing up in the field and gaining ground, but also then in many cases becoming a mother, and how they dealt with the travel. And it was something I haven't seen before. So I encourage you to take note if you are in that position where you're having speakers share their journey. Just remember, seeing is believing, and we have both of those paths, right? It's never just the professional. The personal is always there as well, and we can learn just as much. Without further ado, here is Jodi Shelton. Enjoy. As many of you know, I'm a huge advocate for Dell Technologies, for the brand, for what they stand for how they operate, and their impact in the world. I'm fortunate, along with the rest of the Renegade team, to have an inside look at their culture, to work with them pretty intimately. And I can tell you this company and their leaders walk the talk. You can learn more about Dell Small Business by following @DellSmallBiz on Instagram and Twitter. And specifically for female founders and entrepreneurs, the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network, or DWEN as we call it, is running their Dream Tech contest, where your entrepreneurial story could win up to $40,000 in Dell Tech. Applications are open now. You can head to dwen.com/AmyJo. That's DWEN.com/AmyJo. And you can learn about everything and apply. Jodi, welcome to the Why Not Now show. Thank you for joining me. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, let's hop right in. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now?
So I have a few of those moments, to be honest, but I think that each of them probably illuminates something that would be important for your listeners. So I'll go through a few of them. I think that my most important why not now moment was when I started my own company. And at the same time, I started the Global Semiconductor Alliance. So it was in the same year. And at that point, I had a great job at a semiconductor company. I was an IR executive. I had played an instrumental role in the IPO, and it was an exciting and growing company. But in the back of my head, I had really a dream of working for myself, of starting my own PR and IR and marketing firm. Also, at the same time, what was happening is that there was a transformation happening in the semiconductor industry. And I felt that I could help usher in this new era by putting together some sort of consortium, although I didn't know exactly what that would be, but some sort of consortium of like-minded companies. And of course, when I look back on all of this, it was such a leap. I mean, I was in my 20s. I was unprepared. I was unqualified. Put it this way, no one would have hired me to do this job. I hired myself instead. So I think that I was young enough, I was naive, I was confident, and confident enough to think that I knew what I was doing. And I never really even considered failure as an option, because I had maybe 1 month of rent in my bank account, if even that. And so I just had to go from, day one. And in the first month that I started Shelton, I got my first IR client. And so I'm in that pitch meeting, and there's, okay, Jodi, so how much is this on a monthly basis? And I had not even thought about that. And I just had to pull a number out of thin air. So it was pretty funny looking back on it. And around that same time, several months later, I had launched the Global Semiconductor Alliance with 50 companies signing on at that point. And so I think that what I learned from this is, take risks when you're young and then, maybe make it a way of life. And so I have two other funny examples because they're kind of similar. And that is that, several years ago, I decided that I was going to run a triathlon, or I was going to do a triathlon. But see, I didn't even really know what one was. So I'm saying run a triathlon. So I wanted to do a triathlon. So why not, right? So other than, of course, I wasn't in shape. I had never run a race before. I had never swam competitively. I didn't even clip in when I biked at that point in time. So I just started telling everybody I knew that in the fall I was running a triathlon. So I just had to, at that point, I couldn't back out. So it was a great way to just force myself into that decision. And the second one is very similar. And that is that one day I decided that I really needed to move to China, that I wanted to build my business there. I wanted to build relationships. I thought it would be great for my kids. So at that point, I didn't even talk to my husband about it. I just started telling everybody at dinner parties, at meetings, yes, next year we're moving to China. So sure enough, we did. And it was one of the greatest experiences. Not that all my why not moments have been successful. And I think that that's an important lesson too. I was working with a high-end fashion designer in Paris, and they wanted to open a brand here in the US. And I was like, I can do that. And, within 1 year, I had opened a boutique on Madison Avenue. Things were going okay. But at the end of the day, I don't think they wanted to make the investment that I thought was necessary to move to the next level. And so I had to sell the company. I lost money. I had invested a huge amount of energy, time, and emotion into this project, and yet it still failed. So I don't regret doing that, because what's great at the end of the day is that I survived. So I survived failure.
Oh, wow. We have a lot to dive into here. So these... First of all, total renegade. I can just imagine the response of, oh yeah, I've been telling everybody we're moving to China, because that is so something I would do too. But what you said, and I think even going to each one of these, Jodi, so the fact that you said you were unprepared, you were unqualified, nobody would have hired you, so you had to hire yourself. Within all of these themes, between that and the triathlon and starting the fashion line, moving to China, like you've always bet on yourself. Clearly, you have. And if we look at your chart, your track record over time, it's up and to the right? You might see a few jaggeds, but you've got a trend line there. Is that something that you feel is just innate? Did you have to train yourself to bet on yourself? Or, you mentioned the confidence early on in your 20s. I can't believe you started this in your 20s. Wow. And I'd like to get into each of these things, but when you think about that concept of betting on yourself, what do you have to say about that?
I don't know if it's innate or what it is. First of all, I grew up with very few things, to say the least. I always hate to use the word poor, because I know that, that conjures up a lot of images, but we grew up with very, very little. And I literally had to work for everything I had. I have, a W-2 from the time I was in sixth grade. I literally have held a job from sixth grade on my whole life without ever having a break from employment. So I have a very strong work ethic, and I just, have this confidence that if you're willing to work hard enough at something, you'll succeed. Which, again, I think that the example of the fashion brand was an example that's not always true. But at the same time, I just think that working towards something, you just really have to keep everything moving forward.
It's so interesting looking at your roots and how you grew up. And similarly, there wasn't a ton there, but I almost think you've got one way forward and you will make it happen, right? It's just, it's instant grit. You kind of just have this instant grit. But you said something else that I absolutely loved, is that you started telling everyone what you were going to do. And this is little do you know, this is Renegade Rule number 2. We don't give ourselves an out. But this is like putting a mechanism in place that holds us accountable. And it's like the only way forward is across that starting line and almost tricking ourselves, right? And reverse trapping. So I love this because I think that this is the quickest way to get started for people, right? If you just start saying you're going to do something, usually there will be some steps to green light that, right? And because we don't want to be embarrassed. It's like one of the biggest fears for humans is to be embarrassed. So in the telling everyone, has it ever backfired on you? Because I do that too, and I don't think it has, but it's because I am like hell-bent on, this is going to happen now, right?
No, I think that's true. And, I mean, I typically, when I have an idea of something that I want to do, I mean, I have people that I trust and that I respect that I reach out to, and share ideas with so that, I can have someone else's input. I call it my personal board of directors. And by the way, unfortunately, that's not an original thought. I stole it from one of my board of directors, one of my great friends and mentors. But just having your own personal board of directors, people that you can reach out to and toss around ideas about your career, your personal life, your financial life. And I think that having those people, I think it's very important. But at the end of the day, if you have to believe in your idea. And so you have to make that decision a lot of times alone. I know that when I started the GSA, I went and pitched it to a lot of people, and I went and talked to a lot of venture capitalists that I have a lot of respect for. And they were like, no, Jodi, that's like the stupidest idea I've ever heard. They said that this trend that you're looking at, it's not sustainable. It's not something that's going to last. And so companies aren't going to want to, join anything where they have to make a commitment or even endorse this particular business model. So, luckily I really ignored their advice because if not, then the GSA would have never gotten started. So I think it's having, people that you trust, but trusting yourself. And, the other thing is that a lot of times it's just about forward movement, putting one foot in front of the other. So I've been talking for many years to, close friends and to my kids about this idea that I have for a screenplay. So talk. That's all it was really. And then I decided, okay, so I'm going to take some screenwriting classes. And I did. And I studied scripts, and I would compare them to the movies that they were based on. I read screenwriting books. I joined Facebook groups. But at the end of the day, the only way to write a screenplay is to put words on paper. So during COVID, we obviously had a little extra time on our hands, and I had my children here. And so my son, who eventually became my co-writer on my screenplay, said, Mom, today's the day. And we got out a whiteboard and just started. And so fast forward 2 years, and the pilot that we wrote has won something like 35 awards. And no one's purchased it. And it's, I can't say coming soon to a theater near you. But the fact is that one foot in front of the other is the only way to move forward.
Wow, that's so cool. And I remember you telling me that. I'm so glad you shared that. And are you allowed to say the name or share the title?
Well, the title, it's called Non-Official Cover. So it's about a female CIA agent starting in the 1980s and time that she spent all over the world. So it's a pretty cool story.
I'm the voice of the audience, and I know if I'm wondering, they're wondering too. So good. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so this is something that I've noticed about you. And Jodi and I sit on a board together, and we've become each other's, I'd say, even sounding boards to a certain extent as a result of us both being on this and haven't known each other too long, but it has become extremely apparent that yes, although albeit you've reached huge, crazy successes in your life, what I think is really, really unique, and I want to dive into this, is that you live and have this zest for life that is like this mosaic. It's almost like an art piece. Like one day you'll be in India giving a talk on global semiconductor alliance supply chain, whatever. And then the next day I'm learning, wait, you started a fashion company and you were on Madison Ave, and then your screenplay and like all these different facets of you is you live life playing full out. It is so clear, right? And you just go for it. Can we dive into that a little bit more? Has that always been the case, A? For someone who's feeling like a little dull, what would you say to them? B, like I've got 97 questions, but where do you want to take this? Because this is not everybody.
Well, I'm an extremely curious person and I like to be learning all the time. The background on the screenplay is that I'm a big history buff, and I've studied a lot about modern history, about terrorism, and about different countries and people and religion. And I used to read these books, and I would make all these copious notes. And someone said to me one time, is this like your hobby? And, the fact is that I have like some weird interests for sure, but I'm always curious. I always want to know about people that are different from me. I want to learn from them. So I read a lot. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of documentaries. So I like to constantly be learning, and I invest in that. So I invest in time that it takes to read and study new things, and traveling. To travel and to completely learn about a country that seems so dissimilar from ours, and that it turns out that people are pretty much the same everywhere, and they have their same goals and objectives that we do, and they just want to live a good life and have a great family. And so it really isn't so different. And I love doing that.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. You invest in your curiosity. I love that. It's I always say curiosity is a hobby of mine, right? But investing in it. And I've got so many areas I want to take this conversation, but while we're here, I want to talk about time, because you technically have the same amount as everyone else, and you've managed to use it in ways that are extremely powerful. For you, it appears to be living a life full of rich experiences and just diverse experiences. I have a concept where I really kind of delineate between capacity and bandwidth. Bandwidth being finite, We've got our 24 hours, we've got our energy. But capacity meaning we can always be flying higher. Our potential is limitless, it's infinite. What can you tell me about your relationship with time and maybe how it's evolved over time? Because you're leading GSA, the Global Semiconductor Alliance. You've got your own firm. You do a lot of different things, like on different boards. But then you have these curiosity hobbies, screenplays, and all the other things. What is it about your time and how you treat it that allows for this?
I think that there's two different ways for me to answer that. And one is that I'm a very self-aware person. So this means that I really know what I like and what I don't like. And I know what triggers me. I know what stresses me out. I know what makes me happy. And so I really try to make time decisions and really all my decisions based upon this self-awareness. So is doing something going to make my life sweeter or richer or deeper or more meaningful? And so what that ends up meaning is that I'm pretty greedy with my time, and I set priorities, and I'm very disciplined when it comes to scheduling downtime, time to read, time to exercise, sleep, think, sit in the sun, write. There's nothing more exciting for me to have nothing on my calendar and sit down with a piece of blank paper and write a stream of consciousness. That's usually how some of my best ideas happen is through doing that. So that means that I have to schedule that time. And again, I'm pretty disciplined about that. And I think also that I try to be around people who energize me and lift me up. I still have friends from grade school. Okay. So, I mean, people that, I feel really comfortable with, and that I know that I'm going to, just have a great time with, and get away from the stressful things, and into things that I really enjoy. And as you know, Amy Jo, I lost my husband not all that long ago. And for about 3 months after he died, I had a hard and fast rule that I was not going to make over 3 decisions a day. And as you know, when you go through something like this, there are like hundreds and hundreds of decisions. And so people would come to me and I'd be like, sorry, I'm going to have to talk to you tomorrow. I really can't make another decision for the day. I'm at my limit. So I'm very adamant about protecting my own sanity.
Wow. Wow. I really appreciate that you're aware of your self-awareness. Right. And so then you can manage it so much better, I imagine. So, and having been through what you've been through, the last couple of years, and knowing you now, and have been relatively new friends. And I think it's fascinating how you have spent time on yourself that has then paid dividends in every single area, every other area, it seems, right? So when you say you've become very disciplined about, your schedule, and even like the 3 decisions a day, as you were processing probably the most intense portion of grief, is saying no and passing on an opportunity even difficult at all for you?
Not really. I need not to say that I pass up. I mean, I've taken a lot of opportunities. I see opportunities, almost everywhere I look. But I know myself enough to know if it excites me. So as you know, that as you talked about earlier, that we're on a board together. And I have to say that the first time that this company reached out to me, they spent sort of 6 months trying to just get a meeting with me. And it was because I knew that I really wasn't in a position to take on anything new. But when I was ready, and of course, very, very worth it. And it's been very, very rewarding. And I think that it's a great opportunity for all of us. And so, I don't want to set it up as that I turn a lot of things down, but I just turn down busy things. Maybe the truth is I'm just lazy, but so I really don't like doing the busy stuff. I like doing the creative stuff. I like things that bring something of value to my life. And I know all those things, they have to be done, right? But
what's a busy, I want an example. What's a busy thing? Because we want to start turning them down too.
A busy thing is, I don't know, it's errands, and it's cooking, and it's cleaning up, and it's thinking that if I don't have the house perfect when someone comes over, or if I don't do this perfect, that's busy. And I'm at the point of my life that fine, I don't care. It's just it doesn't bring a lot of value to life. I know that when my kids were young, I used to, I was very, very adamant about the fact that when I was with them, that I was going to have fun. And that, I didn't want to be the person that was, oh my God, you're wrinkled. What are you eating? Why don't I have a healthy meal for you? So it's not that I ignored those things completely, but I ignored them a lot.
Well, just so the ROI of that and your joy and zest for life is tangible. I would say that's not a bad thing at all. The proof is there. I love this. I just turned down busy things. This is gold. So would you say, and I don't want to brush over you losing your husband. I feel like, when you even sharing that, thank you for sharing with us. Do you feel like you're in a bit of a redream phase, or that you went through that, or how are you doing?
So I'm doing okay. I mean, I for sure don't know what I want, how I want to live the rest of my life, or exactly what I want to do, but I'm okay with that too. And Again, I've tried to like fill my time with things that I maybe would not have otherwise been able to do. I've been talking about wanting to visit Pakistan for 10 years. I've been talking about this. So I finally went last year. I went in September, and it was one of the best trips of my life. So I'm doing lots of new and interesting things. Not that I haven't always, but perhaps just doing some of those things that I wouldn't have been able to do before. And, it's not, so I also, both of my kids are in college. So I have, I do have time. I do have time to really investigate those curiosities and to do things that I really want to do.
I love that. And you do it with such grace. And while you have this time, you're also, leading these organizations and serving and representing. You clearly strong leader. Just to be able to get rid of the busy things, like you've got to be able to delegate and organize around execution, right? But when I think about your leadership, I think about a story you told me, Jodi, when you've been in this, we all say male-dominated industry, which I kind of roll my eyes a little bit because aren't most of them, but yours really, really is, right? So
Right.
They all are. But I think back, you started in your 20s and you're in the semiconductor industry. Then you create the alliance, the global alliance. And you told me a story about, I think it was a dinner and event in Silicon Valley, where you looked around and someone came up to you and talked about the diversity or maybe lack thereof in the room that sparked a path for you and an aha. Can you share a little bit about that?
So yes, I was at a dinner. I do these VIP board dinners about once a quarter, and invite, of course, my board, but also several CEOs who are not on the board and other executives. And so one of the gentlemen who attended was new, had never come to one of these dinners. And he sat next to me and he's like, wow, Jodi, this is like the least diversified dinner I've been to in Silicon Valley. And that's saying a lot. And I looked around and it was like, well, this is the same dinner that I have every quarter, that I've had every quarter for every year for the past 20 years. So it's exactly the same as it always is, which just shows that I stopped looking at it at some point in time. I became used to it, comfortable with that. And so, he said it and I did something about it. Literally, that was in September. And by December, we had started the GSA's Women's Leadership Initiative. So as I said earlier, that I reach out to a lot of people and run ideas past them. And I had a couple of women that I called probably the next day, or at least within that same week, and said, I've got an idea about how we can start this. Let's get going. And we did. And by December, we gave our first award to the Rising Women of Influence. And so this is recognizing a woman that is on her way up in the organization, and that everybody feels that she will be in the C-suite within some period of time. And so that was the launch of it. And we did it at our annual awards dinner. And that year also, Dr. Lisa Su was awarded with the Morris Chang Exemplary Leadership Award. So the first two awards of the evening were to women. And I had so many people that came up to me afterwards and said, this is the best thing that's ever happened. And by the way, because my audience was primarily male, it was mostly men saying this, but it was one of those things. And I've said this before about the GSA, that everything is about timing. If you start something too early, you're pushing uphill. If you start too late, then it's too late. Someone else beat you to the market. So I think that timing is really important. And although, of course, I wish I would have started the Women's Leadership Initiative earlier. And I regret my part in not having started it earlier. But the truth is the timing was perfect, because that year really everything pivoted. And, I didn't have to convince anyone that it was the right thing to do. I didn't have to beg for money. I didn't have to beg CEOs to sign a commitment letter. People were ready to do it. They wanted it to be done. And so again, I think that timing proved to be perfect.
I love that. I love that story and how honest you are, because I think, I've been in that spot before too, where I've just become a bit complacent. Like, this is just the way it is. And I've been used to it. And it's like, oh yeah, actually, this is exactly when I should be sending those elevators down and trying to rally everyone. And so I was fortunate to attend one of your events here in Austin a few weeks ago, and learning the stories, these badass women in this field, were up there sharing the parallels of their career and their personal lives and how they got to where they were, which I thought was a really smart calculus to share, because we can't compartmentalize those things, right? They coexist and they integrate, they don't separate. Would you mind sharing a little bit of early days for you as you're starting? I recall you talking about traveling internationally with your kids, and as someone who can take all the advice she can get at the moment, and is trying to navigate having a toddler at home and the mom guilt versus mom pride, talk a little bit about your story and how you approached it in a pure renegade fashion.
So I think that if a renegade is someone who, doesn't let the world define them, they don't look at, oh, well, this is the way things are being done, then I definitely think, if that's the definition, then I'm a renegade. And yeah, so when I started GSA, again, GSA now is so much of who I am, and I love it. And I really believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in what the organization is doing, and I believe in the mission. And so again, trying to get people around me inspired, it's not so difficult, because it's authentic. I really, really do believe in this. And so that makes it exciting. And again, I think that I had that when I had children. So my children became part of my work life, and my work life became part of my children's life. It really kind of meshed together. I really never tried to separate them that much. I think that I told you the story when we had dinner the other night about when I had my first child. It was so meaningful. I can still take myself back to that moment. And I wanted a child. I very, very much wanted a child. I worked very hard to have a child. And it was just, I loved every single second of it. And I wanted to share that. And again, who do I share it with? On a board with, about 20 CEOs. So that was my friend group at the time, right? And so I shared it with all of them. And I shared the joy of what I was experiencing, and told all kinds of stories. And the reaction that I got from individual board members, it just warms my heart to think about it. They, would write back and say, oh, you took me back to a time when I had my child. And so all of a sudden they really started opening up. And so I took that as such a good sign that people want to know about you, and they want to know about your life, and they care about you. I know that my board, I know that they care about me. We've been together for a long time. And the other thing is that for as long as I could, I took my kids everywhere. So I actually probably lost money the first 5 or 6 years when I had kids, because I had to, pay for their travel everywhere. But my first son, Elijah, his first trip was at 3 months old, and we went to Taiwan to see Dr. Morris Chang. So that's a pretty great story to think that he had baby will carry. So I made it fun, and I loved it. That's the other thing. So I love what I do at work, and I love what I love being a mother.
And is there anything that you've noticed with your kids that you feel is a direct correlation in who they are because of those types of experiences and the way you led that lifestyle? As you look at them now and in college, and are there any quirks that you're like, yep, I did that?
Oh, there's lots of quirks. I think that the biggest thing is that they both love to travel. They both speak multiple languages. My youngest is now learning Russian. He knows Chinese, Russian, French, and English. So I think that part is cool, because they've been all over the world, and they saw that, respect for a culture can sometimes mean learning the language, learning to love the food, learning to drink the tea. So, I was a bit lazy. I didn't learn Chinese, because all the people that I worked with from day one in either China or Taiwan, from day one, these guys were, educated at MIT and Harvard and Stanford. And so they speak English probably better than I do. So, I never really had to do it, but I think that my kids saw the benefit in learning languages. Mm-hmm. And, I think also after you get to a certain point with your kids, if they think the way that they were raised was cool, then that's awesome. And I think that both of my boys think that they were raised, in a cool way, and, that we went to China and that we went all over the world. And, I think that at the end of the day, they think I'm pretty cool. So yeah,
I love it.
I did something right.
If that's not a KPI, I don't know what it is.
No, really
come
nothing.
On, let's go. So I just have a couple of rapid fire questions, but before I do wrap up here, I say that and I can think of two more, right? I recently was, last week I was up in Montreal, and I was fortunate to give a talk, and one of my fellow speakers who also keynoted was Marcus Buckingham, and he talked about love and its role in life, not just romantic love, but how love fuels learning. Love messes with time and just how powerful it is. And I just have to say, I've been thinking about this a lot over the weekend since listening to him. And I just have to say, it appears you bring love to everything you're doing, right? And you just genuinely are equally curious and love, that learning. And so it's just this takeaway, and I felt an intuitive hit to just call that out, because you can't fake that, right? You can't manufacture that. And so I love that you shared, you've learned what makes you happy and what you like, and you do those things, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, anytime that, love can be part of the equation or part of the description when describing me, I think it's great. It's a great compliment.
Oh, well, I genuinely mean it. And it's interesting because, of course, here he is speaking to the Women's President's Organization, and we're all there for business, but he brings love into business, and it was really powerful. So a couple rapid fire questions. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is thinking, what is my why not now moment? What's my next one? So I think that trying to evaluate what I'm going to do next is definitely, is on my mind right now.
Amazing. Amazing. Is there anything you read recently that you just made note of? It could have been an article, it could have been a quote, it could be a book, or maybe you watched something that you're just like, wow, this opened up so many pathways in my mind.
I don't know about necessarily opening up pathways, but I mean, I have, I'm a big reader, and it's very hard for me to, say which book's my favorite, but let's see, I read Mohammed Chakra, who's a new author that I was introduced to. His book, For Bread Alone, was one of my favorites that I've read recently that I loved. And again, it's just, presenting a very, very different life and how this young kid dealt with that.
Interesting. What's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over?
Maybe that listening can be a superpower. It's so funny because one of my early mentors, Dr. Robert Pepper. So Dr. Pepper told me, he brought me aside one time and he's like, Jodi, I think that one of your biggest skills is you really know how to listen and take that and build consensus around it. And I thought, I was like so disappointed. I was like, really? Like, that's my one gift that you're telling me that I have is listening. So, I was a bit disappointed to hear that was my superpower, but it turns out that it really is. I mean, I run a board with about 20 CEOs that are leaders of companies, like Qualcomm and Marvell. And, so I can't teach these guys anything, but what I can do is really listen to their interests, to what they're concerned about, and to try to take something and run with it based upon really listening to them.
And you know what? I would challenge that you can't teach them anything, and I hear what you're saying, because you have a gift for building unexpected bridges, right? So these individuals on this board, some of them are probably competitors, right? So I can imagine being able to be a place where you're building consensus among unexpected stakeholders. And that's what the GSA is really, probably, right?
Yeah. Yes. It's so true. I mean, I think that, people are surprised sometimes that competitors can sit across from the table and that we can find commonality and things that we can do together. And it really is a very congenial board, and they actually really are very, very open with each other, and have a real friendship with each other.
It's cool. That's cool. That is
It
extremely
is.
valuable. So let me take you back. I'd love for you to kind of think about the days, which were not so long ago, where you did feel like 3 decisions in a day, that's all I'm going to do. If you could go back to yourself on one of those days where you're capping it at 3 and say something to yourself, what would you say?
I think that when I look back, just whether it's a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I think that if I could just always be reminded to just enjoy myself, just enjoy this period, and try to take the best from it, and take lots of bikini photos when you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, when just know that this is a great time in your life. And yeah, so sure, I could be reminded of that.
Ugh, I love that. I'm writing that one down here. You should see my copious notes, Jodi. Like, look at these.
I love that.
Best place for people to follow your journey, which is fun, by the way. You're going to get to see some cool places. Where would you suggest they follow you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram, so Jodi Lives Life. And then also on Instagram is Design the Difference, which is our Women's Leadership Initiative Instagram. So I would say both of those. And yeah, so that's probably the best place. And then I'm on LinkedIn, of course.
Yes. Okay. And we'll make sure we link to all of those in the show notes below. And reminder, Jodi Lives Life, it's Jodi.
Yes.
So please make sure we get that in there. This has been awesome. I'm just grateful to know you. Thank you for spending your time and energy with us, but also for doing this important work. I'm learning from you daily, and I really, really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I really love your podcasts. They're great. I think that your audience must really appreciate the advice and hearing from other people and giving them the bravery that they need to make the next step in their journey.
Well, it's all because of renegades like you agreeing. So thank you. And we'll be following along.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?